Did you know you can buy silver at spot price? Get your 10-ounce bar of silver at spot price today. Go to sdbullion.com/RP. Not only will you be buying silver without any premium, you'll also be supporting the independent media. Reluctant Preppers gets a small commission when you take advantage of this special offer, going to sdbullion.com/RP. That's sdbullion.com/RP.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We're always delighted to have this returning guest of high importance and interest to all of our viewers. Rob Kirby, founder and host of KirbyAnalytics.com, is here with us again on Reluctant Preppers. He is a proprietary analyst expert in what's going on in interactions between the financial and economic situation and precious metals. He's here tonight to talk to us about another twist on this, and that is, what is the evidence that we are seeing the actual collapse of the fiat money paradigm in front of our eyes today? Rob, thank you for joining us again here on Reluctant Preppers.
Pleasure to be with you again, Donegan.
In the pre-show, we were talking about a phenomenon that is all too familiar to people who have been trying to be responsible and reducing risk for some time and looking for solid money, real money enthusiasts who are concerned about a potential reset or collapse of the fiat debt-based money paradigm, and many of whom have been stacking physical gold and silver as true monetary assets for some time. And yet there's concern, and sometimes you could even say the sentiment is as bad as it's ever been, even among some very hardcore and fully convinced people who are very educated about this, thinking, when are we ever going to see an actual response to the crisis that seems to be forming all around us in the fiat money system, that we're not seeing that signal response in the prices of precious metals? Can you talk to us about what you're saying is actually right there in front of our face as a clear sign of the collapse of the currencies, even though we're not seeing it in terms of gold and silver prices?
Yeah, okay. I'm going to start off by saying people who, or let's just say if people have purchased and do possess or own physical precious metal, my message would be patient and hang on, because much of what we are anticipating and have been anticipating for many years is in fact unfolding, just not exactly in the spot where we expected it to as of yet. And when I say as of yet, I say it because I do completely believe that the precious metals have a lot of catching up to do. And specifically what I'm talking about here is that we are watching the undoing of fiat money in front of our eyes, except it's happening first against the cryptocurrencies. And this is the rise of currencies like Bitcoin, but there's more to the story than just Bitcoin. And as I said in the pre-interview, I mentioned to you that I was reading from Cliff High's website a little bit earlier today, a tweet that he had put out citing Max Kaiser on RT television, saying that $1 worth of Bitcoin 7 years ago is today valued at 1.4 million with the current price of Bitcoin. And that is, by any definition, at least in my view, that's something, or a great example of hyper-inflation. And this is what all fiat money, which is backed by nothing, is literally dematerializing relative to the cryptocurrencies. So I find this extremely it's somewhat counterintuitive relative, I must say, to what I expected to see happen. I would have I would have figured 7 years ago, and did figure that cryptocurrencies weren't really going to become what they have. And I expected the relative importance of precious metal to soar in value, certainly before anything in crypto land. And but what it shows and what it's a testament to is just how much blatant raw suppression has occurred in the precious metals space by the powers that be, the regulatory environment, and the bankers, and specifically the U.S. Treasury, acting with the Exchange Stabilization Fund, has worked to put a lid on the nominal price of precious metal, and boy, have they ever done a good job. But you see, what the cryptocurrencies, at least in my view, what they are showing us is what a free market really looks like, and what an alternative to fiat money should be behaving like. And there's no doubt in my mind that the rise of the cryptocurrencies will ultimately end up being the death knell for fiat money, and we will see the price of precious metals, specifically physical precious metals. The price will soar, the price will catch up, and its day is coming. And the more extreme the price movements we see in crypto land, to me, it's indication that the fuse is getting shorter and shorter and shorter on the inevitable blow up of this vicious precious metals price suppression.
We've had other guests on talking about this principle that you're outlining there, and they've said that ironically there don't seem to be any markets that you can point to where there are any free markets where there's true price discovery still happening for anything that's physical. But ironically, that cryptocurrencies, which are in some sense one of the least physical things out there, are behaving the most like a true physical market should. And so, do you see that foretells when the true physical market for precious metals will reassert itself? And how can it, in your opinion, reassert itself when it seems that those who want to do this naked shorting on paper of precious metals futures and so on seem to have unlimited, funds that they can just keep throwing at that? If they can keep throwing paper shorts against silver or gold, how can those commodities eventually break free of that suppression?
Well, I'm just gonna say, Dunnigan, that the rise in the price of the cryptocurrencies, which looks to be intensifying as opposed to letting up, I do believe that it's probably scaring the bejeepers out of the powers that be, because this is something that they cannot control. And what I find like the other edge of the knife is that what scares me is that the only thing that I can think of that would actually, let's just say, neutralize the crypto land would be for some sort of a dramatic event where the grid goes down, or the internet goes down, or the electrical grid goes down, and that scares me from the standpoint that we seem to be in a geopolitical sense, we seem to be being positioned for the justification of the use of nuclear weapons. And this is what you see. I don't believe in coincidences, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the geopolitical tension between America and North Korea is being brought up to a boil as the fiat money is becoming observably destroyed. And as fiat money is failing against cryptocurrencies, we have the rhetoric being ramped up regarding the possibility of using nuclear weapons. And all I know is that if you get a lot of nukes going off, in different areas, the EMP effect of nukes going off could very, very easily take down significant portions of the grid and basically turn off or shut off the internet. So, would I put it past the New World Order crowd to get engaged in a nuclear war if they felt they were losing control of the global monetary system? Well, you see, where I come from, I believe the New World Order crowd were behind 9/11. And I think they've been engaged in a whole pile of false flag incidents over the years. Their contempt for humanity is extremely well documented. Their goals of one world government are well on record. Their rhetoric and their talk about nuclear wars being winnable is well on record. And they're, in their own writings, they say that they think that the ideal population for our planet is 500 million people. Well, we currently have a 7 billion population, roughly, on the planet. And, would a nuclear war for these sick, pathetic, disgusting humanoids, would a nuclear war fit with their program in terms of what they have expressed? I mean, in my view, it does. They have the contempt for humanity, and really, they want most of us gone. They think a nuclear war is winnable. They've written about that in the past. And these people, I do believe, might have it in their head that, they can have a nuclear war. They can destroy, it would be an excuse for getting rid of the current monetary system, which is failing. They could blame the failure of the monetary system on the war and not accept the blame themselves for their own miscreant behavior. And they could emerge from their bunkers after a nuclear war and govern over the pieces that are left over. These globalist sickos don't think like normal people. And to get your head in a place to even comprehend what they might be considering, you've got to go to some pretty dark places. And these people are sick animals, and these sick animals still exert a great amount of influence of what's going on in the world right now. So yeah, I'm concerned. I try to think it through to the next logical step, and by hopefully putting myself in a twisted way, you put yourself in their shoes, and you think, what would you do next?
Right. We've seen this almost unimaginable sequence of rescue measures or bailout or basically shot in the arm and Walking Dead zombie tricks to keep the fiat monetary system propped up and the stock markets, leading indicators propped up and so on. As far as central banks buying up major portions of the equity markets like Japan and so on. And it does in zero interest rates, negative interest rates. And you do ask what could possibly be done next. So just let me see if I'm hearing you right. Rather than looking around and saying, look at all these things that are going bad in the world, these geopolitical tensions and so on. Gee, that might have a stressing effect on the money markets and so on, and cause a flight into precious metals. You're saying if the money paradigm is already in full failure mode, what is the next escalation and distraction and power chess move that those who want to retain power, who are about to lose it because the game is up on fiat currencies, would do next? Am I hearing you right on that?
I think you and I are on the same page there, and in support of that line of thinking, to me, the treatment of your president fits with that thesis very, very well, because you can call Donald Trump whatever you want, but Donald Trump, at least in my view, is clearly not on the same page as these globalists, and it doesn't fit with his motto of "Make America Great Again." And Donald Trump seems to me to be he wants to raise the tide and lift all boats. At least that's the way I see him. And the relentless attacks on him, which are spearheaded by let's just say the globalist cabal, have reached insane and dizzying levels, and it's very difficult. I can just tell you, for me personally, it's been very difficult to just even turn on a mainstream media outlet and listen to the lies and the misrepresentations of what Trump is doing or trying to do. I mean, it's beyond brutal. And I mean, and it also explains why the mainstream media in America and in Canada too, but why the mainstream media is not trusted by anyone anymore, and why and how they've destroyed their own franchises. It's actually quite incredible when you think about it. And my other fear or thought with regards to geopolitics in North Korea, my feeling is that the globalists may very well be maneuvering Trump into a position where they get this nuclear conflict, which they may very well be desirous of. And I find that, let's just say, unsettling.
For people who have been seeing the upset and the risk building for years and have been trying to pay attention and take prudent steps, everything that you've said does fit together. And is there any shift in your guidance and thoughts on what reasonable precautions or planning steps that an ordinary person should and could be making to help reduce risk to their individual selves and to their family going forward, given that we don't know exactly when or what's going to happen, but it certainly looks like it could be impending and it could be of historic proportions? Well,
I mean, if we do get any kind of a certainly a nuclear conflagration, or let's just say that would be very likely the ultimate scenario under which you would probably want to own physical precious metal. And I'm not for a minute saying I'm desirous of there being a nuclear exchange at all. I mean, the whole thought of it I find so revolting and so appalling. It's, but I'm only speaking to the notion that these globalist clowns, have expressed themselves quite clearly that they believe that like a nuclear war is winnable. These people are sick in the head, and anybody that sick, anybody who is that full of themselves to think in such terms, like you really can't put anything past them. Because these people, they operate on a different moral, ethical conduct, which is very foreign to all but the most deranged people, on our planet. And these people come from a world of entitlement. Like these people they've literally taken all the toys out of the sandbox and just, and taken them home. And they feel that the world is their sandbox, and they own it.
That's another aspect, if you could touch on that for a minute, you've talked in the past with us about globalism versus sovereign states, and that point that you're on right now is extremely important because most people may realize, okay, bankers are in it to take care of themselves, governments are in it to take care of themselves, nobody's in it to take care of the ordinary person, but it's the transnational, non-national aspect of some of these powers that be and some of the elite that can be baffling to most people who use ordinary natural human logic. I mean, natural human logic, whether you like it or not, comes from our heritage from the caves or whatever, and tribalism and the idea you watch out, you take care of yourself and your own, you protect each other, you watch your buddies back, that kind of thing. This idea that you have the most powerful elite who have no allegiance to any country whatsoever can be just baffling to most people. Can you touch a moment on how dangerous that is, in a sense? People talk about the dangers of nationalism, but what about the dangers of people who have no allegiance to any state or any people whatsoever?
Well, I think you can maybe make a comparison. Like, these people act and behave like great white sharks. They're predators, and they anything that gets in their way, they just eat it, consume it, chew it up, and spit it, or spit it out. And these globalist people, the word empathy is something that doesn't register with them. It's like they have no ability to, I mean, they seemingly have everything in the world, because you're talking about, the 1% of the 1% who are the globalists. It's money doesn't give them their kick. Their kick comes from exerting power over other people. Their kick comes from having control and being able to inflict pain and suffering on other people. And these people are they're I mean, there's a lot of descriptive words you can use. They're psychotic. They're predators. They are very, very, very dangerous. They're psychotics, and they have no remorse. They have no feeling, and their next kick is really what they can do to what twisted thing they can do to humanity next. And very, very, very dangerous situation, and a very clear and present danger to humanity.
Yep, and I know you've talked to us in the past about how, like, George Soros with his Open Society Foundation and so on have actually clearly throughout decades used nations of the world and finances of banking and of nations of the world as like pieces on a chessboard, just like playthings. It doesn't matter how many casualties there happen, doesn't matter how many people get dispossessed of their, disenfranchised and their whole livelihood ruined and everything. It's just, it can be, you can look at it through an economic lens and say, well, that's just about transfer of wealth. But there's more to it than that. Like you say, it's really playing with huge numbers of people's lives as though they were pawns on a chessboard. If we could turn the attention a little bit more, since our channel is about preparedness, then we're looking at people, and you've described them quite emphatically as a sociopathic, lacking empathy for others. But even sociopaths are very good at taking care of themselves in the sense of watching out for number one. So what at least lessons can we learn, not morally, but from a practical standpoint, by looking at elite globalists? Are they prepping? And if so, if we follow the money or follow what they're doing, are you aware, or do you know anywhere people can learn more about what lessons a preparedness-minded person can take from the preparation steps that those in the know and those in the powers that be are taking?
Well, I mean, anecdotally, just reading the kind of material and doing the kind of research that I do, I am quite cognizant that a lot of the ultra rich that you would, let's just say people of extreme means, have been buying real estate in I mean, I've heard the names Tasmania, I've heard the names Hawaii, I've heard the names Ecuador, different places in South America. I've heard the name New Zealand mentioned, but I don't think that the average person needs to have their response to this threat necessarily being fleeing to exotic locations. There are locations in continental America that would be deemed to be safer than others, and along the lines of preparedness, my recommendation, I guess, probably more than anything, have a plan. Try to develop a plan, a bug out plan. Have a bug out bag, maybe with some food rations, a means to protect it, and something with which you might be able to transact should the internet not be around. So it's common sense preparedness, which is really what you're all about anyway. It's the namesake, of your site. When we talk about being preppers, we most of us, I think, do so reluctantly, because a constant state of preparedness is as it may be important to your livelihood as brushing your teeth every day, or washing your hands, or or cutting your lawn and keeping your house in good repair. Having a plan and reviewing it every now and then makes a lot of sense, and it's not that difficult to do. And to me, it just makes for good living.
If you could talk to us for a moment about the aspect of the financial markets that you're seeing. We've talked about sort of geopolitical threats and how that could be tied to the breakdown in fiat supply. Are there any current events that you're seeing in the areas of either things that the Fed is doing or not doing, things that foreign banks in our banking industry are doing or not doing, things that our government is doing or Trump wishes he could be doing, but he's been prevented from doing, specifically saying these are that you're seeing are signs of the times?
Sure. Well, I mean, from the standpoint, Trump is being Trump is being foiled by the powers that be, really, on all sides. I mean, Trump came to the presidency, as a Republican president. His own party, it seems to me, has it in for him. He has a Justice Department that is staffed by former Obama people. Basically, anyone who he's tried to appoint has been shot down in the vetting process, and he's had a great deal of difficulty staffing his team or staffing his administration with people who believe in his plans and his agenda. So he's fighting an extreme uphill battle right from the get-go. And I look at what's going on regarding the Federal Reserve. They've gassed off that they're going to keep raising rates. Frankly, I don't believe that the Federal Reserve is going to continue raising rates in any kind of a substantial fashion. The Federal Reserve talks about them possibly starting to reduce their balance sheet and starting to sell paper. I don't think the Fed can sell paper, because I don't think there's anyone to buy it. And there's no willing takers of what the Fed has on their balance sheet. So this whole idea that they're gonna trim their balance sheet, I think, is a ruse. And the other thing I want to just stick in people's ear, and they might want to think about this. because this also plays back on something that I feel is very important, that people understand who is really in control of our global, or let's just say the U.S. dollar-centric mechanism. A lot of people feel it's the Federal Reserve. I feel and believe, because my research tells me, that the real levers of power are being pushed and pulled by the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which is a part of the U.S. Treasury, and I think it's important to make the difference and understand exactly what it is. If you can't identify what the enemy really is, it's really hard to understand. At least in my view, it's hard to understand the motivation of what they're doing. And for instance, we've heard the Fed state for quite a few years now that they ended their QE, quantitative easing. And it may very well be true. The Fed may very well have stopped their QE. But my feeling is that the Exchange Stabilization Fund has continued with QE. But you see, nobody puts the questions to the monetary authorities about just what it is this Exchange Stabilization Fund has been up to. And we've got a Fed that speaks out of one side of its mouth saying the QE ended a number of years ago. And while that may be technically accurate, I do believe that the Exchange Stabilization Fund has been outright purchasing and memory holding U.S. government debt that the likes of China, Japan, Saudi Arabia, and Russia have been selling. Because when your biggest financiers are selling your country's debt and you continue to issue even more debt, you've got to start asking the questions about who's doing the buying. And I have heard no good answers to who's doing the buying in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years. And I truly do believe that it's the Exchange Stabilization Fund that, in my view, probably has tens of trillions in dark money contained within it. And these bonds, U.S. government debt that other countries have been liquidating, I believe it's being purchased with the dark dollars and it's being memory hold. So, I find it very strange over the years, Dunnigan, having grown up in the fixed income markets. I worked in the bond market for about 15 years and as a broker of interest rate derivatives. And I find it really remarkable that in the United States of America, there has never once been a failed bond auction. And I'll just tell you something. Like Germany has had failed bond auctions. Right. Italy has had failed bond, not with regularity, but it's just that it's sort of like if somebody from baseball said that they were batting 1,000. Right. Would that be believable? Like, would you accept that as fact?
No. Coming from a background of engineering and science, the old saying is you always want to see the noise in your data. If you've got the needle pegged against 0 or 100, you don't believe you're seeing the true signal.
Exactly. So, and my feeling is, and I think about this from time to time, the notion that America has never, ever had a failed bond auction. Not a 2-year bond auction, a 5-year, a 3-year, a 7-year, or a 10-year. Never a 30-year, never a failed bond auction. And I know, like, Germany's had, like, there's a list of them over the years. Occasionally, Canada's had failed bond auctions, but America never won. And it doesn't even fit. To me, it's a red herring. It stands out. It absolutely stands out. But you see, this is all supportive of my whole thesis that, this is the way the U.S. Treasury, and the reason why America has never had a failed bond auction is because the Exchange Stabilization Fund is always in the background and is always ready to pick up the slack and make the bond auction always appear as a success. And it's not the Fed that would do that. That's what the ESF is for. That's what the ESF was created for. So anyway, I think that's another big thing, and it's our what we believe to be our capital markets is a complete and utter sham. It's a complete. We've been sold a complete bill of goods, and we have got no semblance of free markets. We live in a world, unfortunately, that is so highly centrally planned. It's stunning. And it's stunning how few people really realize just how centrally planned our economy really is.
Yeah, we had Daniel McAdams from the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity on, and he was talking about, he said, if most people understood the manipulation of our corporate media, they would be aghast to realize that it's more controlled than the Kremlin-controlled media of Soviet Russia, and yet most people have no idea of that.
Yeah, well, if you want to get your head around just how controlled it is, all you need to do is turn on CNN for 5 minutes and listen to the listen to the hypocrisy and the venom that is in these people towards your own president. It's stunning. It's so in your face. It's hard to miss it. Anyway, it's very, 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 very. We live in very interesting times, and we are very likely are living through a paradigm shift right now, and the effects of this paradigm shift are going to become more and more evident to more and more people in very short order as we move along here.
Rob, you and I are both of a somewhat older generation, and I want to ask you a different kind of a question right now. Bringing together all we've talked about through all of our interviews, as a person of our age looks at their children, or especially at their grandchildren, with all the risks that you've outlined and all the potential bad scenarios that end game plays out, what is one thing that an individual can do that would improve the chances of their grandchildren being able to grow up and to thrive?
To me, the best from a financial standpoint, Dunnigan, I believe that the best thing that anyone could do for their future generations would be leave them a legacy of physical precious metal, and it's what do they call it? I think some people refer to it as we touched on this earlier, but it's the 3 Gs: guns, grub, and a getaway plan. It is the essence of being prepared, and even if we do so reluctantly, you need to have a plan. You need the contents of the plan, and you need a way to protect it. So, it really cuts back to the very, very basics of what it is you're all about. Being prepared.
And Rob, before we let you go, if people want to find out more about your work, we mentioned in the beginning you're a proprietary analyst. What does that mean, and how can people take part in learning more about what you do? Well,
what I do, the economic research that I do, I call it proprietary forensic macroeconomic research, which is a bit of a mouthful. But all I really do is I guess in process, what I try to do is reverse engineer things that I see in front of me, where the reason being given for don't make sense to me. So I like to sort of try and pull things apart and look at them as to what must have happened for the conclusion that I see in front of me. And that's kind of sort of what I do. And You can catch me on the web at kirbyanalytics.com.
Rob Kirby, founder of KirbyAnalytics.com. Thank you once again for joining us here on Reluctant Preppers. Looking forward to our next visit with you. Always eye-opening, always sobering. Thank you, Rob.
My pleasure being with you.